Nice Place to Brew with Jason and George, a show about all things beer and beer making. Gentlemen, please broadcast responsibly.
Welcome to A Nice Place to Brew. I'm Jason.
I'm Polly.
Wait, you are not George? What is going on here?
Right?
Welcome. This is our June 1st episode. We have a lot to talk about tonight. But to introduce one of the things that we're going to talk about, in front of each of us is a can of some very, very fancy beer. Fancy. Fancy like Hams, like natural ice, like what is this? What do we have here, Paulie, in the green can? We have Jenny's Cream Ale and a ruby red Kolsch, and last but not least, Yingling. So we're going to be going through these beers, and we're going to talk about these beers in greater detail than probably anybody ever has. But before we do that, hold on. Paulie, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Jason?
Oh, I'm doing just fine. Hey, you actually, before we get into the review and before I introduce the topics and the links and everything, you had quite a homebrew filled weekend. You had a new brew setup that you just completed, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it was my buddy Uncle Rick. He's been wanting to try and do a self-contained brew system to where he could just roll it in and out of his garage. And me working at a local homebrew store for a while, I kind of mimicked it off the system I've been using for many, many years and won me a couple awards with.
That's awesome. Now that's complete with pumps, with kettles and everything, isn't it?
Well, the brew and grow rig has got kettles. It has a pump. Both systems have a pump. The only difference between really the two systems, I only have one burner, so I'm transferring water through my pump from the kettle. Mash water, strike water, transferring. I'm gravity sparging, but I'm still transferring from a pump into the kettle.
Okay, all right. Did you have a brew day on it?
I did yesterday. We did.
You did. Okay, all right. I saw the setup. I didn't know if you'd put anything through it.
Yeah, it was. Uncle Rick was wanting because he really likes, very novice home brewer. He's been brewing the same beer for a while, and he wanted to up the. He wanted to start fiddling around, so he wanted higher gravity beers. So we got the recipe together, and I set the system up, and I did a brew day on it yesterday, and it was actually really easy. Couple hiccups, but it's the matter of kinks to work out of a brew system.
Can you guys see the picture here?
It's coming up. That's the homebrew system I use. Can we do a side by side?
No.
So that's the homebrew system. All right. I would. Okay. So if you look in the middle, that's my mash tun. And actually, at that time, the picture I'm taking right now, I'm in Vorloff. Recirculation, getting the mash bed in there.
Yeah.
And, got the I'm getting ready to fire up the burner right then and there, or at least start transferring over, making sure I'm clear.
And you got your counterflow chiller on the bottom. Is that what that is?
Counterflow chiller on the bottom. I got one of those little spinny things, sparge arms. He's got. Actually, the burner I was using is kind of top of the line. The Blickman, is it Hellfire? I think.
Yeah. I recognize that now. Okay.
And the funny thing is, if you see over on the left those things dangling by the leg, those are the legs that make it a 4-foot brew stand.
Okay.
I could have raised that, but I'm trying to keep everything at the same level as much as I can.
Nice. I tell you, man, that's a top-notch brew rig, especially with your Uncle Rick just kind of getting into things. Wow, he's starting off very well. They're very well there. Well done.
He's been buying a lot of things to get going.
Yeah. Okay,
Scott!
before I do a really proper intro, I'd like to send a special welcome to John Bitterman, who's joining A Nice Place to Brew for the first time. How are you tonight, John?
Fine. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. John, you will quickly find out, has a real wealth of knowledge in the areas of craft beer and also some areas of local history for the Joliet area, which we're going to go into in detail on tonight's discussion. Also joining us is Scott from WNY Brews in Buffalo, New York. How are you, sir?
Hey, everyone. Oh, I'm doing super well. Thank you.
Dude, I'm so glad you're able to join us. The package came just in time for me to get them chilled and get Paulie's out to him. We are totally ready tonight. All right. So before we get into the meat of the discussion, this is A Nice Place to Brew. We do a twice a week webcast every Monday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Our past episodes are available on our YouTube channel as well as our live casts every Monday and Thursday. We have a website at www.aniceplacetobrew.com. Our social media pages are on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Nice Place to Brew and A Nice Place to Brew. And last but not least, we have a podcast under the name A Nice Place to Brew that's available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcast from. All right. And one last little formality. Our usual co-host, George, could not join us tonight. He had a scheduling conflict and could not make it. We do expect him back for Thursday's show. So, George, I would say you don't know what you're missing, but you do know what you're missing. You have these fine beers you'll not be partaking in. So, but I hope you get to tune in. And I hope you enjoy the episode. All right. We are officially in. So John, all right. So I'm gonna throw some stuff at John to kind of get us started. John, you you have a very in-depth history of the craft beer history of Joliet, to the point that you had an is exposition the right way to say what you had at the Joliet Museum last year?
Yeah, I had an exhibit down there that ran for almost a year.
That's awesome. Could you talk a little bit about that?
It was an exhibit on the history of the breweries in Joliet, from the very first one in 1835 all the way up through the craft breweries that are operating in the city right now. It talked about all the different breweries, their history, with a whole bunch of artifacts, oddball things like glasses and signs that they used for advertising over a century ago.
That's awesome. And you have a collection of artifacts from, dating back to the very beginning of this, don't you?
Oh, yeah. My oldest thing in my entire collection is an 1867 check from a brewery in Chicago, from a brewery that actually burned down in the Great Chicago Fire.
Oh, my God.
Oh, wow.
And then the newest thing I got is when I was out this past weekend, I went downstate to visit a couple of the breweries that had just opened under this lockdown in the state, and I stopped at Keg Grove Brewing Company, and I got a couple of new craft glasses from the Keg Grove Brewing Company down in Bloomington, Illinois.
Wow. And just to go into a little bit of the history, and I think this there was a couple of breweries that made repeated mention during the exposition, from my recollection. And I do remember there was one prominent brewery in Joliet that had a fire during Prohibition, or was it right after Prohibition? And that kind of spelled the beginning of the end for them?
Actually, Porter Brewing Company had closed by the time the fires broke out.
Okay.
They were the second brewery in the country to have their equipment destroyed by the federal government for violating Prohibition.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay,
and
got
so
it.
When Prohibition ended, their equipment was in complete ruins, and they failed to really raise enough money to be well capitalized to start up in the years after Prohibition, and they shut down in a matter of about a year and a half. And then the plant just stood there vacant for years, slowly getting burned away until it was torn down for an urban renewal project.
And where is that located in Joliet? Is that where the Brickyard is?
It's on Bluff Street.
Scott?
No, it's down on Bluff Street. On Bluff Street, just a little bit off of Jefferson, where Wheeler runs into it there. Right before Right before you go up the curve at Lafayette, down from the high school, down from JT Catholic, and then a little bit to the south of that, towards the train bridge.
Yep. Down, and there's a park down there, isn't there, nowadays?
Yeah, there's a park down there. And there's a big stone that's on that location that marks where the brewery was and tells a little bit about the history of it.
Oh, I'm going to have to go find that now. Thank you.
Could you talk a little bit about the other breweries that predate Prohibition that you've been able to collect artifacts on?
Yeah. The first brewery, like I said, was 1835, and they were on Bluff Street as well, over a naturally occurring spring, several blocks away from where Porter started his plant. He started the second brewery in town in 1858. In 1859, there were another brewery that started, and Fred Saring, who started off as a bookkeeper at that brewery, gained control of that brewery and the one across the street. It gave him a 5-acre plot of land on which his brewery sat, and he built a house for himself and a house for each of his 2 children and a house for his brother-in-law on an area still known as Brewery Hill. The Fred Saring Castle is still there, and so are 2 of the houses. And those breweries did quite well, growing substantially to the point that by 1900 they were both producing in excess of 35,000 barrels a year, which by today's standards, when you think about the microbreweries and how much they're producing, that's really quite a bit of beer for one city to have 2 breweries producing that much.
So just thinking about that, is it fair to say that, well, it's certainly fair to say the distribution model is dramatically different today than it was back in 1900. But I'm just trying to think, if a brewery was producing to that level, are these beers that became available nationwide, or how far was the reach of these?
No, surprisingly, and given the size of the population of Joliet, the per capita consumption must have been extremely high at that time compared to what it is now, because we have only 5 craft breweries in the area, really, and we got about 175, 180,000 people. Back then, Joliet hadn't even cracked 100,000, and you had 2 breweries producing upwards of 35,000 barrels apiece. But they did send beer out. Saring sent beer up the canal to Lamont, where it was bottled at a facility and then distributed from Lamont, but probably not very widely, because you wouldn't want to venture into the city of Chicago. That was packed with breweries on every other block for a long, long time. Porter also sent beer towards Lamont. Saring sent beer also to the east towards the Chicago Heights area, where there was not a brewery. Because every town had a brewery, then your distribution footprint was not particularly big. Wilmington had a brewery. It wasn't a very big one, but the people in Wilmington were probably patronizing their hometown brewery, much like everybody does now with their hometown brewery. So they weren't going to be buying Saring or Porter. So the direction you went in was dependent upon if you were going to bump into any competition. You have to remember that Aurora had a brewery, Kankakee had a brewery. You had going to the west, you had Ottawa, LaSalle, Peru had breweries, Joliet did. So you had to pick a direction you were going in where you weren't going to be bumping into anybody because of that. And also distribution, it was horse and wagon. You're not loading it on a semi and driving it there. It's as far as your dram team can go in a day with a few 1,000 pounds of barrels and beer on it, and turn around and still make it back before the dark and the day's over. Because you're not delivering in light, you're only delivering in the daylight hours. You don't have a headlight on your horse and wagon.
On your horse and wagon, yeah. Well, it really makes that 35,000 barrel number just extraordinary.
It does, really. And the great thing about it was we opened up a third one in 1905, the Citizens Brewing Company, and that opened with a capacity of 80,000 barrels. It didn't reach that capacity, that many barrels, until after Prohibition, and he eventually topped out at about 115,000 barrels a year before declining rapidly. But still, when they opened, they were probably producing about 35,000. So you had 3 breweries in 1910 producing about 100,000 barrels of beer in the city.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
It really is.
Yeah. And just thinking of the landscape in Joliet, because obviously you have the big river connections and the big bridges that I think really kind of founded Joliet's growth. Just giving a little history for the people that aren't familiar with the history of Joliet, all that kind of built around which industries that really kind of gave rise to not only the craft brewery scene but the overall economy as well.
Well, the first major industry in Joliet was building the canal, the I&M Canal.
Yeah.
Is really what brought people to Joliet initially. It was the Irish immigrants then, and then later on you saw the Germans and the Slovaks arrive, and that expanded rapidly when the steel industry came to Joliet. I mean, that's why Joliet's known as a city of stone and steel, or iron and steel, because
there you go.
You had the quarries all over the place, and all over the place. Literally, Porter even owned a quarry at one point in time over off of Rowell Avenue, where the Joliet Beach Club is. That entire area there that's filled in with water today, where the Beach Club is, used to be Porter's quarry.
I didn't know that. I live right by there. Sorry.
So you had the quarry industry that brought the first way, that helped settle the area. You were in a good farmland. You had the shipping on the canal and the river, and then you had the steel industry come into town. So we were settled on multiple fronts from multiple different industries.
Sorry,
That's
I lost my train of thought there. Okay.
I have some questions, if it's all right,
Of course.
because I don't know the area at all. How far out of Chicago Metro is Joliet?
It's about 35, 40 miles, maybe not even that.
Yeah, something.
We measure everything in how long it takes to get someplace. It's an hour from Chicago.
All right. Light traffic.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then, what was the canal connecting?
The canal connected the Chicago River to the Illinois River. Illinois River then runs into the Mississippi River. So what it meant was product coming out of Chicago, instead of shipping up and around the Great Lakes, could ship down the Missouri River, drop off product in St. Louis and down through New Orleans, and then into the Gulf of Mexico as well.
It's if you spend time in the Chicagoland area, Scott, you'll find that the entire south/southwest suburbs were all built around this I&M Canal that John is talking about. It goes beyond just Joliet. There's a whole string of towns that's industries and towns really started there.
Yeah,
Jim Coaching has taught me to stay away from the south side of Chicago, so I do.
Well, all
three
of us are technically south side, or at least more south than north. So, but anyways, okay. So let's fast forward to Prohibition. So obviously the immediate impact of this is the federal government directs all breweries in the country, including Joliet's, to close immediately. Is there documented history about what kind of happened right afterwards? And was Joliet subject to that same Capone style corruption that was pretty much rampant around Chicagoland starting then?
All three breweries in Joliet tried to make a go of it with a cereal beverage or root beer. Citizens amended their articles of incorporation to include the production of soda and cold storage for furs or meats. But the money wasn't to be made there. The Saring family sold the brewery to Chicago interests who used it as a wildcat brewery. The Porter family sold the brewery to mobsters who kept that brewery going as a wildcat brewery. And the Citizens people just decided to, because it was a stock-owned company, to just operate as a wildcat brewery on their own. So at all 3 points in time, all three breweries were eventually raided. Like I said, the Porter Brewery was the second brewery in the country after a brewery in Elgin, which was also under the control of the same people that had the Porter Brewery, had their equipment destroyed. They had locks put on the doors, and when they actually destroyed the equipment, the beer flowed out to the canal and down the canal for a 5-mile stretch of foaminess, is what the Herald News said. So the Acme Brewing Company, they came in and they sealed the building, took an inventory, and 6 months later, half the beer in the inventory was missing. They're not sure how they got it out of there because the doors were actually sealed and it was guarded. They figured that the guard was bribed to let some beer escape. Citizens, they actually chased down the brewer of Citizens to Europe. The brewer was caught making beer. He was arrested. He was released on bond and fled to Europe. And they brought him back from Europe, and he was tried and convicted, but he was not sentenced. And Citizens had to put a wall that separated the brewing equipment from the area where they made soda pop. So over the course of Prohibition, all three breweries were eventually closed. At one point in time, Joliet was referred to the wettest city in the state of Illinois outside of Chicago. And even bigger note was by that point in time, members of the Joliet community were in control of approximately 20 breweries across the state. So we weren't just citizens of Joliet were not just operating our 3 breweries. They controlled the brewery in Peru, one in Pekin, one in Millstadt, one in Mascoutah, one in Aurora, one in Elgin, one over towards Chicago Heights. So we were just as corrupt as a city as Chicago was, but we escaped the notoriety because we were outside of Chicago. Once Chicago was on lockdown, all the beer was shifted the production out to the suburbs further, and that's where we gained our notoriety.
Was wine and spirits manufacturing, was there a presence there as well?
Joliet was never a wine or spirit city. There are 2 recorded distilleries in the city, both of them on the east side. In the very, very early years, I think they were probably both out of business by 1880, 1890 at the absolute latest. But there were reports of wildcat wineries and wildcat distilleries in the area. But distillation attracts slightly more attention than what breweries do. You mean it takes a little bit more equipment, creates a little more of a disturbance than what it does. Winery, we're not at all in a wine country. You want that? You got to head up to Galena or downstate. I'm sure that Galena was a great brewing region, still is, and so we're downstate through Anna and some of those other cities. I'm sure there were they kept on producing too. And the thing was, wine was in a sense legal because it was used for religious purposes. So throughout a great deal of prohibition, you will see where wine was actually produced, but it was well kept under lock and key, but it was claimed to be necessary for religious purposes for communion.
Well, and that wasn't that a big factor in prohibition going away? Was the religious aspect of alcohol consumption?
No. The biggest aspect was the corruption that occurred. It was costing more to enforce the law than to simply abandon the law. The corruption of the Women Christian Temperance Union and the other groups, the Anti-Saloon League, were discovered. They were quite hypocritical in some of their behaviors and actions. You couple that with the fact that the stock market sank and we entered the Great Depression, and it became clear that we need to find out a new tax revenue and start some industries up. And people it was never supported in the grand scheme of it. If you were to have probably taken a poll of the country, you would have probably found 35% of the country that were in favor of it and 65% that weren't. But the problem was that 35% controlled things. It was never popular in the big cities. So if all the rural counties in the state of Illinois decide they want to go dry, it doesn't matter how much Cook County wants it. There's still enough representative government in the rest of the state to override Cook County, or to override a big county, or even in the case of, say, New York. New York's going to want to stay wet. Rochester's going to want to stay wet. Buffalo's going to want to stay wet. Mm-hmm. But based on proportional distribution, if the rest of the state wants to go, the legislative is going to end up voting itself dry.
Sure.
But when the Depression came and people were unemployed, they began to realize we're spending a ton of money to enforce a law that's not popular. The St. Valentine's Day massacre and things of that nature really angered the public greatly, and they started to revolt against it even more than what they were before. And we realized that we have a tax revenue base there. If we tax alcohol, look at the tax money we're going to get. Plus, farmers are going to grow more grain. We're going to employ the coopers to make the barrels. We're going to employ the people to deliver the beer. We're going to have the taverns open. We can charge taverns for licenses. Oh my God, that's a huge revenue stream. And we're going to put people back to work. Let's see if this helps a little bit. And it did. The tax revenue stream increased substantially, and it put a great deal of people back to work. It didn't help overall until the war came, because there were still so many unemployed people. But it was a major industry that was brought back to life to help try to curb some of the heartache that was occurring because of the depression and the stock market collapse.
I want to bring this around to home brewing real quick, because I'm gonna try to tie it with what you were just talking about. The year that Prohibition went away, I don't have that nearby. Which year was that?
1933.
1933. We're in the year 2020 right now, and Paulie Scott and I, about a month or two ago, we had an employee of the American Homebrewers Association that joined for discussion here on the webcast. And he talked in great detail about some of the legal legal aspects that the American Homebrewers Association participates in. And one of the things that they talked about, and this was a landmark victory that they had, was they'd recently closed out and brought closure to the last law in the United States that outlawed homebrewing at the state level, and the state was Mississippi. So just put a yeah.
I would have guessed that or Alabama.
Yeah,
they were both.
Exactly. I don't want to bully Mississippi or Alabama, but hey, it's you've got this on your records. But anyways, if you just put a timetable around that, Prohibition goes away in 1933. It took us till 2020 before every state would at least make it legal to make your own beer at your house. It's very strange.
It's a shame it took that long. There's just a mere fact that it took from 1933 to 1979 when Jimmy Carter passed the initial law that allowed homebrewing. That was a huge gap in time in and of itself that should have never existed. Really.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's the one thing. I mean, listen, there's no question we've come a tremendous distance as far as the regulation of alcohol. I think we're, for the most part, in a pretty good place where we are right now. But a lot of places will tell you, and I would echo this, that there is a level of complexity in the number of laws it just becomes pretty eye-opening. Just because you have local level laws, you have city laws, you have county laws, you have state laws, and then of course at the end you have federal laws. And there's writing for alcohol on basically every level. So you quickly end up just tripping yourself over just the amount of regulation out there at all those levels.
And it's a horrible patchwork too.
Oh my God, yes.
There's very uniformity on any level of it at all. Even in the city of Chicago, you can have from ward to ward differences in what you're allowed to do and not do, and that creates a bigger problem. At least within the city of Joliet, it's one set of laws. But you get to Chicago and you can get changes from ward to ward on what they do or don't allow.
Yeah.
I won't describe which brewery in particular, but they were having problems because the firewall that was required between the brewery and the seating area, they did not expect because they were the first brewery in the ward, and it wasn't necessary in any of the other breweries that had opened in some of the other wards. And they had to spend an exorbitant amount of money because of a necessary firewall. I don't know what the problem is going to be. I've never seen a brewery burst into flames spontaneously. I mean, there were a great deal of brewery fires in the early 1900s, but those buildings were burnt out of wood. But in a brewery today, what's gonna catch fire that you have to have a 2.5 foot thick firewall between your brewing equipment and the seating area?
It's a good question. Oh my God.
That's a great question.
Good breweries have the brewery in the seating.
Yeah, right. But that's different areas. So John, what are you actually, I remember you telling a story. Can you go ahead and tell us again? I know the story of when citizens, which actually the building's still standing across from Joliet Central High School, what actually got them to shut down? It was the high school football team got drunk, correct?
I actually on the day they opened in the fall of 1905, they threw open the doors of the brewery for a large party, as Saring had done just a few months earlier, and essentially invited the entire city to show up, where they gave them food and all sorts of free beer and things of that nature. And the high school being right across the street, a bunch of football players from the high school and other students of the high school showed up and were caught drinking. You're talking 16, 17-year-olds were caught drinking in the brewery, and they were suspended, and the high school rest of the football team refused to take the field because their team members were suspended. And Joliet Central forfeited the last 3 games that year because the team wouldn't take the field because their friends were suspended. But it resulted in a lengthy series of court cases between the city and the school against Citizens Brewing Company. And eventually they pleaded no contest. They didn't want to drag it out any longer, and they didn't even pay any fines. but they maintained that with the number of people there, they could not be held accountable for somebody who snuck in illegally and was drinking beer on premise.
Okay.
Wow.
And Citizens was actually, because they turned to Bohemian, correct? And they were the last brewery left open in the city. Is that right?
Yeah. In 1948, Joe Fusco, who had served as an underling to Al Capone during Prohibition, had gained enough stock to take control of the Joliet Citizens Brewing Company. He renamed it Bohemian Brewing Company and discontinued the Joliet Citizens brand, and then produced Bohemian Club and Van Merit out of that plant until 1958. In 1956, he gained the stock and gained control of the Monarch Brewing Company in Chicago on 21st, and also enough stock to take over the brewery in Thornton. That gave him a large amount of capacity, as Joliet Citizens at that time, which had topped out at 115, was barely producing 60,000 barrels a year. Thornton was the same. They were producing half of their capacity, and Monarch was. So he took the two breweries and closed them and moved all production to the Monarch Brewing Company in Chicago, and then operated that for about another 5-6 years. I think Monarch eventually closed about 1962, 66, someplace in there. And that left Joliet with no brewery for well over 30 years.
That's one thing that I think I remember from the exhibit at the museum. There was a long stretch of time where Joliet had no brewery at all. And as a matter of fact, wasn't it up until just within the last
2 years? Yeah,
4
2
years
years now. I think it was 3 years at Migraine. Migraine will be open 3 years this year, and Elder shortly thereafter will be 3 years here. Yeah, Joliet at the time they opened 3 years ago was the most populous city in the nation that didn't have an operating craft brewery in its borders.
Wow.
Which is, I mean, when you think about where we're at in our location close to Chicago, you could get a sense for maybe why we wouldn't, because there were so many ones around us, but still to have been the largest city in the nation at 165,000 and not have a brewery, when you had a town like, I don't know, let's say DeKalb that had a brewery, or even very small towns in Montana. You'll see, population 5,000, they got a brewery.
Sure.
Here we're sitting with 100, almost 200,000 people, and we don't have a brewery operating.
So Migraine ended that long stretch.
Yeah.
Wow.
That long stretch.
Wow. Okay. And how long it had gone? 30 years or more?
1958, 2017.
So that's over 60 years. Well, close to 60 years then.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, we were just short of 60 years without a brewery.
Well,
when you think about it, we were really late to the brewery scene too. When you think that the first one in Illinois opened in 1988, it still took us a long time. Even when you think about the first one that opened, we were still 30 years late to that dance.
What was the first brewery in Illinois that opened?
It would have been Seabens River North Brewery on Ontario. They took the name of the old. They took the name of the old Seabens Brewing Company, which was a mob-controlled brewery that closed in the 60s. It was a beer stube, actually. It was a typical beer stube for the time period. Large wooden tables in their courtyard, and they served pretzels and simple food like that. It was on Larrabee, down where the Cabrini project ended up getting built. They were the first. They were the first craft brewery. Was Seabens River North.
Wow.
And they may have been late in '87. But you're still 30 years, past our time opening, and still, you're still a solid 32 years ago.
Yeah.
And then here we go in like 2006 or 2007, we have the explosion that we have today, which is awesome.
Right. I want to cheers to Migraine for breaking that long stretch. And honestly, I like Migraine a lot. First of all, their location is awesome. Right there on the outskirts of downtown, right there in a train station building, and they got good food too. So, well done, Migraine.
And they actually had a hard time building that brewery.
I can imagine.
Inside of that.
There's limitations to the space that they're in.
A historic building, you have to be careful what you do in a building that's on the National Historic Register too. You can't make, every approval, everything you do has got to be approved by the Historic Commission, so you're not altering the building too much.
Is that train station?
What kind of building are they in?
They're in the Union. They're in Union train station in about 1907 or so.
Okay.
All the train lines coming through Joliet, and they crisscrossed all over the place.
Yeah.
Got together and built a single station, Union Station, and they all converged onto that one station. We used to have a train that ran right through the courtyard of the courthouse for years. That made it, very difficult to conduct business downtown. They elevated all the train tracks and built a single station for all of them.
And
Wow,
since then, it's
that's great.
got its protected status.
Yeah.
Wow. Totally
I
get
just
it.
remember hearing stories of them like trying to, when they were building that place out, they're like opening stuff up, and there's still like dirt floors in this old place. They had to pour a bunch of concrete and just to move it around. Like I remember the old train station. I remember like the old Amtrak and how they had a few bathrooms down there, and it's just, and now how it is today. It was kind of weird. Changed over.
Well, they did a good job with that. It's a really nice building.
They did. Real good job. So,
Should we start tasting? I can ask John
Sure.
questions all night, but seriously, I have not popped the can open and I'm thirsty. So, we want to do this?
Absolutely.
let's do it.
All right. Okay.
What are we drinking first?
John, before we dive into this, do you have a website or social media links that talk about some of the history work that you do?
No, I don't.
You don't know? Okay.
I'm just a lazy person who does.
I don't think lazy is an accurate term to describe it.
I get yelled at all the time that I should be doing things of that nature. I often get asked if I'm ever going to write a book about the history of the breweries in town.
Yeah.
One day I'll get around to all that. One day I
Well,
will get around to all that. But in the meantime, I'm always willing to show up anywhere and share my knowledge.
Let me raise my hand and say I will be one of those people that will be cheering for that to happen. No, you really are a wealth of knowledge, and thank you so much for coming on and talking with us tonight.
Thanks for having me again.
Sure. Okay, time to drink. Okay, so the lineup tonight is, I'm taking one can out because I don't think we have all of it. We all have it. We have Natural Ice. We have Jenny's. We have Yingling. And we have Hams.
From the land of sparkling water.
Yes, from the land of sparkling water. Okay.
Sky
Okay.
blue, not sparkling, sky blue.
Okay. All right. So I hope you guys had a chance to check your emails before you came onto the show. I want to talk about these beers on the basis of the BJCP score sheets. So this is not required writing. This is not a homework assignment. We're not writing essays, but I at least want to follow the format of the BJCP score sheets as we taste and talk about these beers. We all good with that? And for anybody who's listening, if you want to follow along, you can. These score sheets are widely available. If you go into Google, Yahoo, whatever your search engine is, type in BJCP score sheets, and you'll see just the basic layout. It's broken down into categories. Where's mine? Oh, crap.
Hey, right.
It tastes a little different because it's peanut
All right, guys,
Should I please have some milk?
help me out here. What are the categories? I lost my sheet.
We got
Aroma.
aroma, appearance, flavor, mouthfeel, and overall impression.
There we go. So that's what we're gonna do. All right, Ollie, where are we starting?
Yes. Yingling, because I'm waiting for the Genesee to get cold still. So, let's do Yingling.
Yingling.
And we all know this beer. I don't know. I
Well,
don't know
you know
Genesee,
what?
so-
I think we've talked about this before, but Chicago is one of the, or I should say Illinois is one of the very few places where Yingling is not widely available.
No.
No, not
Actually,
necessarily.
actually, their distribution ends at Indiana. Now,
Oh,
Indiana, Tennessee, Kentucky. I think parts of Louisiana, but not all of Louisiana, and Mississippi and Alabama. So it doesn't get past the Mississippi River unless it gets on the other side of New Orleans.
Okay, so it's geographic. It's not just they have a particular problem with Illinois and they said, "Sorry guys, you can't have our beer."
No.
Oh, okay.
It's like the course for the new generation. People are known to drive it back across the country to the western U.S.
I like that narrative way more though. I don't like you, Illinois. You can't have my beer.
I like my made-up narrative. I enjoy it.
Yes, exactly.
It is super easy to get here. It is
Yeah,
everywhere.
Yeah, the places I when I travel, I frequently end up in either Georgia or Virginia, and Yingling is widely available in those states, and it fits the areas that John was talking about, just areas east of the Mississippi River.
I mean, remember, I had to go to Indianapolis to get the John, Jason, and I Yingling for this, so
Yeah.
I had to leave the state to do it. Hey, can you grab those Genesees?
Okay. So let's go through the score sheets. Okay. The first category is aroma for Yingling.
Smells like a American lager.
Smells like beer.
This smells like beer. There's there's very little hop note.
Yep.
I wouldn't even call it just a malty aroma. There's really not much aroma at all.
No, it don't have any nothing to it. It smells like beer, like John said.
Yeah.
Like a base. Which I get a feeling this is going to be the same with all these beers. So it's so fun to talk about.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
Especially because we're going to be doing them all cold.
Well, all of them. There's 3 of them.
Yeah. I don't think they're all cold, are they?
All right, ready for next category? Appearance.
Appearance, I like the dark color.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Slight amber color.
Yeah. No,
It's not like yellow pea water beer, like a lot of American lagers are.
Right.
I do like the color a lot more.
Yeah, it's got a nice amber color.
Yep. And it says right on the label, original amber beer.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So it's definitely what they set out to make. There's no question about that.
Yep.
Next.
Mouthfeel? Flavor. I like the flavor of this. I mean, it's got a little bit of, it doesn't have the basic rice or corn that you see in American lager. I mean, I would like to. I would actually like to see what their grain bill is, because it's got I don't want to say roastiness, but it's got a good flavor to it. Different.
It's got more of a bready taste than a rice or corn taste.
The rice and corn flavor is not there. Yes, I agree with that. To me, there's not a lot of standout flavor with this. Is that fair?
No, I could agree with that 100%.
Which I think kind of fits with the style and I think the overall conversation here tonight about these type of beers.
And the funny thing is I've drank Yingling so many times, I've never poured it in a glass. I've never seen what it actually looks like. Yeah. Well, no, you got to keep in mind, my very first time drinking a Yingling, I was at the Indianapolis 500. I'm on the infield, and there's a guy that's got a bunch of them. I'm like, hey, man, you want to trade? I'm like, I've never had a Yingling. I've heard about it. I'll trade you whatever I got in my cooler. He's like, you never had a Yingling? And he just pulled one out and said, keep your beer to yourself. That was my very first time ever trying a Yingling. It was at the Indianapolis 500. But I've known about it. I knew about it for so long, but never had a chance to try it. Because I never thought about it, because they're from Pennsylvania, right?
Pennsylvania, yep.
All right, just making sure. It's making me look at my can.
All good. Mouthfeel.
Mouthfeel?
I'll give this one a good rating. I think overall mouthfeel is good.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a pretty solid mouthfeel. It's not as thin as what you would expect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it dies quick.
Definitely
goes away quick.
and it doesn't dissipate. After you swallow, you still know you had something in your mouth.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can still feel it in the
Yeah,
back
that
of your
is
teeth,
true.
you know. The finish is really good.
Yeah.
And Scott's like, oh, look at these guys. I drink this all the time.
We go through it every once in a while. It's not one of my favorites.
So
Do they still make the porter? Do you know? They used to make a porter for years. Old Chesterfield, I think it was.
I don't know. Every once in a while, we get Yingling Black and Tans.
Okay.
But those are and Yingling Light. Those are the only three I can think that I've seen regularly around here.
Yeah, they used to make. I think it was Old Chesterfield or something like that porter. That I remember having once a long time ago that I thought was a pretty solid beer.
overall impression, last but not least. How do we all feel about Yingling?
I would drink it again.
Okay.
I would drink it again. I'll drink a bunch of them.
Okay.
Like, I'm all about like drinking local thing.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm in Pennsylvania, this is what they have steadily. I would got no problem buying a case and sitting around a campfire and drinking them. Which I think most of these beers are going to turn out to be one of those beers.
It's a campfire beer for sure.
No, that's a great description. A campfire beer. I definitely agree. For like a summer night where the weather's still hot, this is a good beer to accompany you.
Yep. You drink a bunch of them and it's low alcohol. What?
I was gonna say, what's the ABV on this? Does it say on the can anywhere?
Probably 5.5. I think it probably should. Hold on, let's see.
I think it's even less, like 4.8.
Is it that low? 4.8?
Yeah, it doesn't say.
You might be right. I'm not sure.
So, John, I remember hearing a rumor, but isn't Yingling the oldest family-owned brewery still in the United States?
It's right there on the can. It's right there.
It is right here on the can. America's oldest brewery.
Yes, they are in fact America's oldest brewery.
I see it now. All right.
and doesn't it go back, John, to like the late 1700s?
No. I want to say like 1836 or so.
1836. Okay, got it.
I would have to. I could run upstairs and check for sure. I want to say this year. I think it's like their 185th anniversary, or last year was. Someplace within the past couple of years, they did 100. They just did 185 years. So
That's
we're
awesome.
another 15. You figure roughly another 15 years till they're 200. So someplace like 1834, 35, 36, someplace in there.
Road trip?
No.
Yeah, I'm in.
Have any of you been to the brewery? No.
Oh, it's a gorgeous.
No, I haven't.
It's a gorgeous old brewery. I went out to Pennsylvania to go to some ball games, and I demanded we go to the brewery. I says, I want to go see this place. I go, it's like for a historian, it's like for like me, it's a mecca. It's a very not particularly large, very relatively nondescript building. In fact, most of the beer and maybe even what we're drinking may not even come from that particular plant, because they have a couple others that they purchased through the years to be able to expand production. But the fact that it's the oldest the oldest brewery in the country, I'm like, we're going. I don't care what you people want to do for that day. I'm dictating this trip to this brewery, and it was worth it. Great tour, great history. They let you go through all the place. They take you back in the caves. They have a lot of neat old advertising all over the place. It's if you're ever passing through the coal region there, because that's where it's at. It's in the anthracite coal region.
How far is it from Philadelphia?
Maybe 90 minutes.
90. Okay, that's about what I thought. Yeah, George had always described it as kind of right smack dab in the middle of Pennsylvania. So that would make sense.
Yeah, maybe 90 minutes from that area.
Okay, all right.
It's a great brewery to go visit.
No, that's awesome. No, that definitely would be one to see. All right.
Let me throw one more question out. Let me throw one more question out since we're talking about old breweries.
Yes, of course.
Joseph Huber, that got bought out by Minhas or whatever up in Monroe. Is it Monroe, Wisconsin?
Yeah.
How old? I know they rank up there right around Yingling.
They're
before
third.
They got bought out.
They're third.
The third.
Yes.
Well,
The
they're
second
oldest in the state.
The second is the August Shell Brewing Company in New Ulm, Minnesota.
Okay. All right.
So, yeah,
Because I used to drink all the time, so I just had to ask that question. So
and of the three of them, in fact, the Shell family still controls that brewery, and the Yingling still control this one. But the founding family for I don't even know what the brewery was before. I mean, it's Minhas. It was Huber. Before that, it was Bloomer. That brewery's changed hands a lot of times through the years. But
okay.
But these two breweries, Yingling and August Shell, the number one and number two oldest breweries in the country, are in fact still controlled by the founding families.
Okay, it's good to know. Because I've been to the Huber Brewing Company before because I used to drink Huber a lot as a child.
Shell's another cool plant. It's a gorgeous old facility in New Ulm, which is not horribly far outside of the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. But for years, Shell's used peacocks as their symbol, and there are peacocks running all over the brewery yard, and the house that the family owned and lived in is still standing there. During one of the Indian uprisings in the 1840s or 50s, they did not destroy the brewery despite destroying most of the town in New Ulm because the Shells were kind and nice to them and didn't chase them off the land and were providing them with food and beer. So they did not destroy the brewery intentionally at that point in time because they were treated so well by that family when they owned the brewery. But yeah, there's peacocks running all over the place, which is really cool.
I gotta go. All right, I gotta go there.
A couple of road trips for everybody.
Yes, absolutely.
It's all about it. Like whenever I go out of town, I'm like, okay, what's local beer? I'm gonna go check out what they have around the area.
Yes. It honestly, I have definitely found that is a great way to travel. Number one, and second of all, it's a great place to it's a great way to experience the history of a place. Because guarantee when you go into a local brewery that's that has a place in a area that you've never been to, guarantee there's history of the area that's going to be part of that beer that you're going to be drinking.
You're also going to find the locals there who can tell you the best places to go eat and stuff like that too.
Of course.
I had that happen one time when I went to Madison for my very first time. I was going to see Railroad Earth up there, and we stopped at Ale Asylum when they were in the original facility. We got there early. We were sitting around drinking, talking to the bartender. I show up with a Miller Lite hat, which I thought was funny as hell. I go up to breweries all the time wearing a Miller Lite hat because I get the looks from the bartender and start talking like, "What are you doing wearing this hat?" And I want that. I want you to say that. So,
this hat smells.
Yeah, I know, right?
Oh no, it's the other one. That's a working hat. I fucked the Bud Light hat up.
But I do enjoy going to the places and learning where to go because that's where I found out about Alchemy in Madison.
Yeah.
If anybody's ever in Madison, Alchemy is a great place to go. I mean, great food. It's not a huge list. Their beer list ain't huge, but it's very good. You'll find something on there you like.
Right on. My suggestion for travelers before we go on to the next beer, I would always encourage travelers when you're in a new place, look out for two things and you'll learn a lot about the area. Go to a local brewery, have a local beer, and then look up a ghost tour. Because the people that run those tours, they know a crap ton of stuff.
All right.
Maybe I should have just cut that out.
No, it's true.
That one fell totally flat. That's okay.
So, am I choosing the next one? Sorry,
yes.
Natty Ice.
Oh,
and the only reason I chose an ice beer is because after listening to your earlier podcast, told me to check out. You guys were talking about it, and I actually made an ice beer one time on accident.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the ice beer that you made, and I also want to talk about that comment I made because I think I was totally wrong.
Can I let you know I have never
do you want to hear the story
had
first?
a Natty Ice?
You've never had a Natty Ice? I don't think I have either.
Let's do this.
I never have. The only ice beer I've had is Ice House or Molson Ice or ice beer that I made one.
I've had Ice House, but I've never had a Natty Ice, and it's just. I could read a book through this beer.
Yeah.
I know, right? It's totally clear.
Check this out. I'm reading my score sheet through this beer right now.
All right, aroma. Nothing.
I also, as a habit, I don't buy anything owned by Anheuser-Busch ever.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys made me spend money on an Anheuser-Busch beer.
Sorry, Scott.
Yeah.
Sorry, Scott.
I'll make it up to you. I promise.
We'll send you the anti-hero malort. How about that?
All right. So let's go through aroma. This one, I think the malt character comes through much more than, say, the Yingling that we just tried.
Okay, I can spell that.
Yeah, and I would give it a higher score on aroma for that. Okay, but that's a characteristic. My only comment is it comes through. My comment about Yinglings is just nothing came through.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. The Yingling had no smell. This has a very sweet smell.
Right.
Appearance, crystal clear.
Yeah, crystal clear. Okay, all right.
Read a book through that puppy.
I think Natty Ice is getting a decent review right now. This is not expected. Okay. All right, flavor. Corn.
Yes, lots of corn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
that's about it.
Agreed. Yeah, corn and nothing else.
Yeah, corn and sweetness, exactly.
Yeah.
Mouthfeel.
Right.
Nah, mouthfeel. To me.
Yeah. Way lighter than other. There's an effervescence though too that I didn't get in the Yingling. Like a bubbly, like a little bubbly feel.
Yeah. Well, there's no head retention in this beer at all.
No.
But properly
the sweetness kind of stays with you.
Yeah, it does.
It does. Yeah, it stays in the back. I can taste in the back. Good sweet finish. Yeah, definitely a sweet finish on that.
Yeah.
Mouthfeel? I don't know.
Yeah, like the mouth feels the category I'm going to knock it down on. There's not enough here.
I think I'll give it a 2.
for mouthfeel, yeah, I think that's a fair score.
I really can't believe we're sitting here getting drunk on shitty beer and talking about it. I think it's hysterical, though.
Yeah, that's
that's what we do.
Well, I mean, that's at least what we're doing tonight.
No.
Well, yeah. Yes, exactly.
Okay, last one. Overall impression.
You know, it reminds me of like a Ice House or Molson Ice or all those ice beers that we drank as children.
I remember Ice House. I think this is horrible compared to Ice House. I thought Ice House was a way better beer than this one. This has nothing to it. At least Ice House I thought had a little malt body. This is just empty.
We had Ice House in a review that was similar to this back several months ago. The flavor that we got from Ice House was astringent. Like there was just these really nasty flavors that came through. This
probably old.
That may have been it.
That beer does not sell like it used to. It was probably an old beer. It used to sell pretty well, but not anymore.
Could very well be, yes. My overall impression, I actually like this beer more than I expected to. I expected to be like, bah, what is this?
Yeah, I'll agree.
No, this is a clean. I would honestly, this is a beer that I feel like would taste pretty good after a day of working out in the yard.
But there are so many other beers that fit that description.
Yes, I'm not saying there isn't, but I feel like this one in that environment, this one works. John, overall impression.
No, it just
No.
something about
Okay.
it is just.
Okay.
I don't know what it is. Something about it is just.
Okay. Scott, final comments?
Yeah.
Yeah, I will never buy it again.
You'll never buy it again. Okay. All right.
The finish. I don't like the finish on it.
Yeah.
Now that the finish on it, I just do not like at all. I don't think it has a really good finish.
Okay. Okay.
Now that I go back and try it a second time, the finish I just don't like at all.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about placements. Do we put Yingling ahead of Natty Ice, or do we have Natty Ice ahead of Yingling?
So Yingling ahead.
Yeah.
Yingling ahead. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna be the odd. Okay. I'm gonna be the oddball in this, and I'm gonna make a vote for Natty Ice, but we're voting collectively here. So if Paulie says Yingling's ahead, then that's where we go. Hey, Paulie. Paulie.
I'm here.
Okay.
Talk to.
Yingling ahead
So,
of Natty
story.
Ice, or Natty Ice ahead of Yingling?
I would say Yingling ahead of that.
All right. So Yingling is in first place after 2 beer reviews. All right.
So
Next.
I gotta do the ice beer story that I've been waiting to tell.
Pause right there. Okay. Is when you see like Ice House or Natural Ice, are we talking about the same thing as like an Eisenbach beer that we've learned about, which can increase alcohol content in beer? It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if they make it that way anymore, but when Ice House first came out, Ice House was a traditional one. They were actually freezing and drawing it off. I with the cost cutting and everything else that's going on, they're probably just dumping whatever fermentable sugar they can get their hand on there now to boost that alcohol. But the original idea was along the lines of let's drive the alcohol up by freezing it and drawing it off.
Okay. So at least we're all using the same terminology when we talk about ice beers. Okay. Paulie?
Now,
So
go, Paulie.
Paulie accidentally made an ice beer, and we're going to hear the story now.
I had a buddy of mine that you know him, Jason Ellis from the club.
Oh, yeah.
The player from Lanya. So he's a home brewer, and him and I did a thing with the club. This was a couple years ago when it was a local homebrew competition. They gave us a certain amount of grains, and then we could do whatever we want with it, but we had to use these grains. So him and I brewed a beer, and like I was brewing with him, and we got the brew day done, and he had this keezer, and I told him, I'm like, all right, turn it on tonight. Maybe once it cools down, or if you want, just put it in there, and then I'll come by tomorrow. It's cold crash, and we can keg it and carbonate it. He didn't realize that there was and this is my fault because I assumed he knew it. There was a temperature control in there. So I'm looking at a little 3-gallon cardboard that has 2.5 gallons of beer in there, and it's got ice crystals just all hanging up on the carboy. And the beer was still liquid. So we actually siphoned the beer off and still kept the ice crystals in there. And then we continued on with the process.
Because there was temperature control that you did not know about.
Well, I knew it was there.
Yeah.
Well, I like the well.
Let me finish. I was talking. I thought the guy I was brewing with knew as much more. Now I wouldn't say as much as I did. More about brewing than I thought he did. And I told him to plug his keezer in, and he didn't know what the temperature controller is. So I told him to plug it in. He plugs it in. It's freezing in there, and I see the temperature controller sitting there on the bottom. I'm like, oh, man, I should have told you about this. So that's what made the ice beer.
I like that story. That's a cool story.
I do.
That's a cool story. How was it, though?
It wasn't bad. We were doing because the grains I got, we did kind of like a German pale ale, something like that. It was like the grains were. I was leaning towards using noble hops and German and Eastern European stuff. And This was before I bought the software. I mean, I can't go back to the recipe, but we did like a German pale ale and did that. And then all of a sudden I look, I'm like, I guess we're making an ice beer. Let's have fun with this. Just do it. So we ran with it. And it did. Because I remember taking the gravity before when we took the secondary. And then once it was accidentally frozen. I can't say he did. We accidentally froze it. And then I took that gravity too. And just like Ice House, like the whole thing with MGD and Ice House, I don't know, 0.2, 0.3% higher. So freezing the water off technically will do it.
Good story.
Good story.
Didn't mean to do it. It happened. I did it on accident. Sorry, guys. It's my fault.
It's all good. Okay, next beer. We have Hams and we have Jenny. And I don't feel right about having Jenny without Scott here. So can we dive into Hams?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
I don't have Jenny, so we have to.
Okay. Look at Paulie's excitement over Hams.
Land of sky blue water.
From the land of sky beer water.
Hey,
From the land of sky blue waters.
Hey, Paulie.
I am here. I'm just.
Hams is pure reef.
Oh, you can hear it. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Putting the
We
kids
are
to sleep.
We are having Hams. And Paulie, how much did you pay for the 30-pack of Hams that you've bought for to be part of this?
Nothing.
$11.
No, nothing.
$11. No, I paid him $11 for it.
You paid $11.
It was $10.99.
$10.99 at
I saw it
Burkhart.
on sale and I picked it up for him.
Yeah, he saw it on sale. That's actually been my beer I'm drinking over here when I'm hanging out. So, but I could get by my liquor store for $15, maybe $16 a third rack. But still, if I wanted, all right, I'm gonna stop.
Score sheet.
I'm not gonna. I'm not. Yep, score sheet. Exactly.
I'm sorry.
Hold on, let me get rid of this ice out.
Yeah. Drink up. Chug. I did not expect
Slam that. Try it.
Okay.
This is the new hipster beer. Remember that.
Yeah, it is the hipster beer, and I will say.
I am like
First thing I'll say.
A goddamn hipster beer.
The aroma is fucking gross in this beer.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm not kidding, and not.
Yeah,
I don't
you're
normally
right,
say the F-bomb on this podcast either, but wow.
No, it is.
I mean, it is
because
it is not
drinking.
good. I mean, that is.
I think it's one of the few times but you can still read through it. I can read a score sheet through it.
Yeah, no, I
Maybe
agree.
I'm missing something. What are you finding offensive about the aroma?
I don't. It's nasty.
It stinks.
Yeah, that's all.
He
It
has a
stinks.
personal vengeance.
See, I don't find it offensive. I'm not sure what I find.
What? How would you describe it?
Yeah.
Definitely doesn't smell like the other two.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're all on the same page there.
No, it doesn't smell like that, but I don't find it. I mean, Yingling had none. The Ice House was a very sweetish aroma. This is just
Right.
okay. Maybe dirty.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's a good description. Yeah.
I can get that. Yeah.
Is that okay? It took me a while. It took me a little while. I did like dirt, almost.
Yeah.
Dirt.
I like that.
But I don't find it offensive. I don't know. Maybe I'm strange. I like the smell of dirt.
Well,
I
I
don't
gotta
know.
tell you, I'm coming around on it a little bit. Like it doesn't taste as foul as it did at first, but that first whiff was whoa, wow.
Yeah, no, it's got a strange little damp dirtish thing going on there.
Yeah,
sort of.
yeah.
But I don't find it offensive.
Okay,
It's not right.
Moving down, appearance. You
It's,
can read. You can read through this beer. So
For what it is, it's light lager. You can see through it. I can see my finger.
Oddly enough, it's even lighter in color than the Natty Ice was.
Yes.
If you still have some Natty Ice around, compare the two of them. It's even lighter in color than the Natty Ice.
No, I can see that. It does. It's definitely lighter.
I didn't think you could get much lighter.
Sorry, I had to taste it. My fault.
Yeah, you're right. It is lighter. Yeah.
Definitely, maybe is it the corn? Because I know they use a lot of corn in hams. Because I've looked at clone recipes. Because me being the home brewer that I am, and this is my favorite schwill, I've looked up many recipes for it. So
gotta be the corn.
But Natty Ice was strong on corn. We were all on the same page there. This is strong on corn, but there's got to be more to it because this beer doesn't nearly have the sweetness that Natty Ice does.
maybe they did a good mixture between the base grain and corn.
But what do you think that is? I mean, what other malts? Come to mind when you taste this?
Nothing really. I mean, maybe I don't know. Like all the brewing that I'm doing, what we've been doing, it could be corn and rice. We don't have a rice beer in our collection here.
So okay, that might make sense. So would the rice dilute that corn flavor? Is that what we think?
It would dilute the corn flavor, and it certainly wouldn't would not contribute to the color. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, any malt would make it darker than what it is. Any real malt, I don't care what the palest malt is, it would still add some color to this, I would think, versus rice.
Yes, I would agree. Yeah, you see how pale rice is. Yes, that speaks for itself.
I mean, even the palest of malt, I think would add some color.
I think that is the answer. I think it's just a combination of corn and rice. Okay.
I've never had it. Let me jump in here.
Cool.
Let me tell you my quick story too. One of the local bottle shops, the closest one to me, was called Ham and Fatties, spelled the same way, ham. And Ham is out of the bottle shop right now. But I had to call him like I need hams. And he left 2 cans out on his porch for me to come pick up.
That's awesome.
And I traded him an oak Borderland IPA. It's an oak aged IPA.
Okay.
For 2 hams.
Okay.
You lost in this deal.
Yeah, you really did.
You lost really bad.
It's not a good deal for you, Scott.
Oh, that's
I
amazing.
love that story, like so much.
Too. I do too. Hey,
can you post that on the WNY Brews page? I traded an oak aged IPA for hams.
Yep.
2 cans. 2 cans. 2 cans.
2 cans.
But he was my only connection to how to get it. And that's his name. So he always makes sure to have some.
You got tall boys too.
Yeah.
You got tall boys. At least you got tall boys.
That's right.
You got 2 tall boys.
No, now it's a Wayfarer.
12 would have been just fine.
It's a much better trade now.
That oak
2.16 ounce
IPA, the one I traded is my favorite beer. That's why I traded for it, because I'm like, he's doing me a huge favor. I'm going to give him a can of my favorite stuff, and I know he's had it before, but it was just the gesture.
Okay.
All
right. Okay, Scott, how do you feel about the aroma that you just poured?
He missed our discussion, didn't he?
He may
smells
have
like foam.
Like foam? Okay.
It smells like, I don't know, it smells
like dish foam or?
That's great.
I think it's got a weaker aroma than the Yingling or the ice beer.
Brats are done, Paulie.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, there's some sweetness in here.
We are on 2 different pages as far as aroma, and I find that very interesting. Like John and I picked up the same thing. Paulie and Scott did not.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to put it into words to pick it up.
Right.
You just
right.
you just wanted to drop an F-bomb all over the place.
Yes, exactly.
and,
I just needed a
was
reason.
and I was like, it's not offensive. It took me a while to put it into words what it was that I was getting out of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you repeat what it
appearance.
was?
Oh, what John came up with was dirt. Because I found the aroma of this beer to be just really foul and offensive. Yeah, okay. Paulie was the same way. Paulie didn't pick up on it.
I did agree. I did agree with you. To a point, Jason. I smell it. It smells offensive. But I never smelled ham until tonight, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Is that because you kept shot? Is that because all the hams you ever had you shotgunned?
A good portion.
Maybe, yeah. Okay.
Or just drink it out of the can and never like smelled the can or anything like that. It's what I'm drinking. This is my light lager that I enjoy to drink. So
Mouthfeel. I think we left on mouthfeel.
all right.
The thinnest of the three.
The thinnest of the three. I agree.
Yep. I can agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. No head retention. No. I think it goes back to the rice that we were talking about a couple minutes ago. I do feel like the flavor suffers noticeably because of the rice, and I think the flavor overall is dulled down, and I think that doubles over with the mouthfeel also. So overall impression, I think I've made my take on this. Before we go over placements, last comments, everybody.
I like this one. Overall, I like it.
Overall, okay. John likes it. Paulie, we know what Paulie thinks.
We all know where I stand. So
Scott,
this is my favorite.
Yeah, I don't have any problems with it.
Okay. All right. Placements.
All right, could you?
What's your ranking?
I would honestly, I saw ranking under Yingling.
You'd what?
I think Yingling is. I would rank it under Yingling.
Yeah.
But it's because I can't get Yingling all the time. I can get this all the time. I guess it's the whole like Yingling. I had to go to Indiana for us to get this a drink.
Yeah.
This I can get a 30 rack across the street from my house.
Mm-hmm.
I will enjoy it. I mean, if I was able to drink Yingling every day and all day, I would. Totally.
Is this ahead of Natty Ice or behind Natty Ice?
Oh, goddamn, like 4 times ahead of Natty Ice. This might go in front of the Genesee stuff. I don't know.
I don't know yet.
Try it.
Scott, what do you think?
Yeah.
I'd put it in between Yingling and Natty Ice.
John?
As well, in between Yingling and Natty Ice.
So that puts hams in the last place category right now, and that's exactly how I feel about it.
No. Natty Ice is worse.
Second place.
Oh,
I think Scott said the same thing. Yeah,
second. Yeah, you said second. Oh, shit. I'm sorry, guys. Yeah, okay. All right. Second place hams.
I'm sure you know this, but it's produced by Miller Coors, which is headquartered in Chicago. I'm sure you knew that.
Mm-hmm.
I do. But when hams are John, you might be able to back me up. They're one of the original breweries in Wisconsin before they got bought out by everybody else. Got bought out by, correct?
No, Hams was founded in St. Paul, Minnesota, and another old brewery, 1850s probably. Theodore Ham settled in St. Paul. They ended up getting sucked into the entire collapse of the industry after they overexpanded by purchasing a couple of breweries, one in Baltimore, one in Houston, and they took over a plant in San Francisco. They overcapitalized themselves. They merged with Olympia Brewing Company. Olympia got taken over by Heilman Pabst. Both of those went bankrupt, and then it all flowed into that Russian dude who ended up with the entire Pabst thing, and then he divested himself of that and sold it back to Pabst. Big
Wow.
circle.
Oh,
Big circle.
all
Do
right.
they still make the Schlitz?
Basically, all those old school brands are currently controlled by Pabst. Schlitz, Heilman, Blatz, Red, White, and Blue, Pabst, Hams. Those all those old school are now in the hand of the Pabst Brewing Company, which just reached the agreement to purchase the old Schlitz plant in Irwindale, California. And then they're going to continue the contract with the Miller plant in Milwaukee.
How many of you guys have seen the movie Blue Velvet?
No.
No, it's been a long time.
No. Oh,
I have.
All right.
Years
All right.
ago.
I'll send you
Years
an
ago.
email with the clip. You guys need to catch a little 15-second clip from there. So I'll leave it at that. It's classic.
Jason, you just opened a cream ale.
I did just open a cream ale. Yes. So this one, this last review is going to be everyone's
Hold
going
on.
to have a separate Jenny. Yes, Scott.
The original.
Jenny.
This is unfair. No, this is not right. Go ahead, and then I'll talk.
It had a hole poked in it.
My phone's down to 7%. I got to go get a charger.
Oh yeah. Go for it, John.
Charger, John.
Yeah.
Huh.
So
Okay,
we got a mix of original and creams.
I
And
recorded a West New York Brews episode last night.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And I described to the guys what was going on today, right? And I said we're doing a best of the bad beers. And I mentioned that I sent out cream ale, and everyone jumped on me. On Zoom.
Oh, this is awesome. I love this.
But like, you can't. What are you talking about, Jenny Cream Ale? Jenny Cream Ale is a great beer, and I said, I know. Well, hold on. Jenny Cream Ale is highly revered around here, especially being 45 minutes away from Rochester.
Okay.
It's very highly revered around here. Not so much Jenny. Right? When I said I sent them Jenny, and they were like, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense. And then I said I sent them a cream ale and a ruby red Kolsch.
Yes.
Because these are two of the most popular selections from Genesee right now. The cream ale, if you look in the BJCP, Jenny Cream Ale is listed as one of the this is what a cream ale is.
It's
that's one of the
it's always
go-to
been right up
examples
there
of
with,
the style.
It's always been up there with a Spotted Cow.
Okay.
The two of them. Spotted Cow is actually a cream ale.
Yes.
They will admit that, and like I said, the two of them, I think, consistently for years have been rated among the best of that style in the country.
Right.
From that are readily available, and we'll say that even though you can't get Spotted Cow outside of Wisconsin.
Right.
And you can't get the Jenny Cream Ale probably any further east than maybe Ohio.
Are you familiar with Jenny prior to the show coming together, John?
Yeah. Well, as a can collector, I've known about the Genesee Brewing Company for years. They old brewery up in Rochester have done a tremendous job of revitalizing the brand.
Do you want to show off the little background you have sitting behind you?
Those cans there are all Chicago cans.
That is
all cans
awesome.
that are from the state of Illinois.
Oh my God, I love it.
And it's not the only wall. You can sit all the way over to the corner.
Whoa!
It's just cans, and more cans on the walls of the basement.
I am so impressed. That's awesome.
For a while, they undertook a craft beer, and I don't know if the Wheel family gained control again, because that was who had it at one time. But they Saranac. No, what was their craft brand? Saranac was Matt's Brewing Company out of Utica. Mm-hmm. They did a craft brand too that was an offshoot of Jenny, and then they kind of let that fall by the wayside as the Genesee brand name came back around.
They just called it. I know. I remember what you're talking about. I remember this. Well, they called it Genesee something. It was Genesee. It might have even just been Genesee Craft.
Was it okay? Yeah, they had a big craft line for a while, but then you know, as with hams and the others, there was an uptick in demand for those style of beers. Even Yingling saw a huge uptick in the old school brands, and they dropped that and they focused back around because the cream ale wasn't available for a while. I know it had been discontinued and thrown out. And they do a Bach too, don't they? Didn't they do a Bach this past?
Yeah, spring Bach that's super popular.
Yeah. They do a Bach too, which is supposed to be pretty solid.
Okay, I've got the cream ale open. Who's all ready? Is it just me? Am I drinking this on my own?
I don't have
John,
the cream ale. I don't have the cream ale, so I'm enjoying my hams.
John, Dundee ales and lagers. Is that what we're talking about?
Wow.
Yep, J.W. Dundee, and their honey lager was their biggest. Their honey lager, J.W. Dundee's honey lager, was their really big one. But they, they made a wheat ale and a whole bunch of other J.W. Dundees, but they abandoned that entire line when they saw a big uptick in increase in demand in just the regular old school brand again. I don't even know if they still make that line at all.
I'm not going to drink my Genesee. I'm going to drink my Jenny Cream Ale.
Yeah.
Or the Ruby Red Kolsch, which is
go for the cream ale. By the way, we're under curfew tonight, so we're going to have to wrap up the show in a little bit of a hurried pace. Hey, Polly, your midnight strikes in about 5 minutes.
It's only 7:28.
I gotta get home before curfew.
Yeah,
being safe.
So you're engaged in a podcast. This is essential.
That's right.
I agree with that.
It's 8:28 here.
I agree. I mean, you guys can keep going, but I can go home.
Maybe that's what we'll do. We'll finish up our review of the. Do you have the cream ale, the green can with you, Polly?
Yeah.
It's cool. A killer beer.
I gotta tell you, this is really good. Yeah, like your friends that said that like this is a revered good beer. They got the right idea.
When I make a cream ale, I'm trying to make a Jenny.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super smooth.
I've never been a fan of a cream ale, so I've come around. You know, like everybody's taste buds are always different.
Sure.
I'm very jealous I don't have one.
Oh, sorry, John.
I'm sorry. I sent one. I sent 2 to Jason, thinking he was going to get them to you, and I sent 1 to Paulie, but he didn't get it yet, and I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I'll get one when it shows up. I was promised a beer, and I'll be able to try it then.
You got it.
Yeah.
And you'll have the Ruby Red Kolsch too.
Oh, cool! Very cool.
You'll have all 3 of them. He sent all 3 to Jason, and you'll get all 3 too. So you can try the Kolsch or the cream ale,
and the red can, the regular.
Mm-hmm.
Being a Western New Yorker, I had to represent.
That he did,
and that makes sense.
I'm looking up how far it is to the brewery from my house. I've made the drive before, but I've never clocked it. 1 hour and 23 from my house.
The Jenny Brewery?
To the Genesee Brewery. Yeah.
Right on.
Oh God, that's good.
It really is. Yeah.
I know. Sorry, John. I'm not trying to build it up.
No, that's all right.
I
I'll get to hear what you guys have to say about it, and then I'll get to go looking for those tastes when I finally get it.
You know what? You know what's interesting about this? This beer does fit the bill with the other beers that we had tonight. It's not like a radical different direction than what we've had. It's just way better than those.
Yep. I'd say it's noticeably better.
Yes,
for sure.
Yeah.
I've not had it. I would think that Yingling is more of an outlier in general compared to the other.
Darker.
Yeah. It's more of the amber lager as opposed to the traditional light American lager or the cream ale in this case.
Yeah.
I think mine was.
Yingling's a bit of an outlier. I think
this is a better beer than Yingling, in my opinion.
I agree, but I'm very biased. I have a huge bias.
Yeah, I get it.
And I get that. I just like my bias.
Is it your go-to beer a lot of the time?
No.
No, I mean, clearly you traded away an IPA oak age beer for the hams, so that might be a little bit more go-to. But I'm saying if you're buying one of them, if you're buying a large mass-produced beer, Yingling and Genesee are the two you go for?
If I'm buying a mass-produced beer, it will always be Genesee.
Okay.
It's just that I try so hard to never buy a large mass-produced beer. I try so hard. Even like we had people, we had my wife's sister come over, and she said this was not during quarantine. This was like a year ago. She said the only beer that she drinks is Mick Ultra.
Oh,
right. And I bit the bullet and I bought a 12-pack of Mick Ultra, and she came over like, "You want a Mick Ultra?" She said, "No." Oh, all right. So I had to drink the Mick Ultra. My Michelob Ultra, Southern Tier makes a light beer like that in the same style can too, called Swipe Light, which is amazing and 95
Swipe
calories. Yeah, Swipe Light.
That's awesome.
It's in the Mick Ultra type cans, the tall, thin ones.
Okay.
So I will hashtag drink local 99.99% of the time, which includes not buying Genesee or not buying Yingling. But if I'm going to buy something, it's going to be a cream ale.
Okay.
Tasting this, I totally get it.
Now, because you're way outside of my wheelhouse for what I know, because it's mostly Midwestern in that sense. But you have any idea how big that brewery is or what their production is at all?
I'll look it up. I'm on their Wikipedia page right now.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what what their production is, how large they are, where do they sit in the grand scheme of everybody.
2 million barrels per year.
That's a sizable brewery in today's
Yeah.
market.
That's respectable, yeah.
Yep. And that's as of 2014. I bet it's very similar right now.
They might be pushing that 3 million mark right now.
Yeah.
2.5 maybe.
What was that just now?
Because I know they've seen a great uptick in business.
Since 2014, the rise in craft beer, yeah, no doubt.
Huh. Sorry, I'm reading about the ownership.
Is it
right,
who's what
I'm
does
gonna
it say? What
sign out.
family?
You got to
It's
sign
North
off, Polly?
American Breweries owns it.
I'll sign up.
Who does?
Hopefully, I'll check back in when I
NAB,
get
North
home.
American Breweries.
You got
Okay.
it, man. Take care.
Bye,
Okay.
Paulie.
Bye. Bye, guys.
See ya. John.
Yep.
Scott mentioned a brewery, and I'm curious what you know about them because it's come up on many different podcasts in the past that my all-time favorite beer is from a brewery called Southern Tier. That's within the greater vicinity of where Scott's at.
Yeah, it's Western New York for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And the beer that I am so fond of is called Warlock, and it's a Imperial Autumn Stout.
Yeah, it usually comes out around the same time the pumpkin comes.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a stout version of the pumpkin. So
Yeah,
I think they brew that right around the same time.
Yeah.
So so I mean, I consider Southern Tier to be a very gold standard brewery. Can you tell me, I mean, as a historian, what you know about them?
You're way once again. You get on the other side of Indiana, and my knowledge just starts to slowly decrease.
Okay.
You get over there into New York, Maine, New Hampshire. I'm like, I know the name. They've been around for a long time. I like their beers. Yeah, I know that brand, and that's about where it ends.
Okay. Fair enough.
If
No,
we want
it's
to
all
talk to
good.
the owners, we can make this happen.
I want to talk to the owners.
That would be cool. Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good.
Because
We'll make it
I do like their beers. They're, like I said, especially I do like both Pumpkin and Warlock. I think they're both really good beers.
Yeah. Yeah. I had Warlock at a World of Beer, and it was on my birthday, and they had it on tap. And it was ordered for me. I didn't even order it. They just saw, Imperial Stout on the menu, and that's kind of my go-to. And I took one sip of that, and I was like, whoa.
You can find those bottles. You can find that in Binny's.
I have bottles.
Usually in July anymore, it seems.
Yeah. No, honestly,
They're pushing the beer season sometimes, and you want to start finding that in July. I'm like,
okay.
oh, come on.
All right, I got more to say about that. One of my first loves of craft beer was Sam Adams Oktoberfest, and that is a beer that I have seen throughout my adulthood, that the first release date keeps getting pushed back earlier and earlier and earlier because there's such demand for it, because people are just screaming for it.
Well, there's a great deal of working for a grocery store. There's a great deal of beer creep in terms of the calendar year, because by the time you actually hit that point in time, nobody wants anymore. They're looking for the next thing, because everybody's always looking for the next thing.
Oh, totally, yeah.
So by the time we hit the second week of October, nobody wants an Oktoberfest, despite the fact that you're still in the middle-ish, more or less, of an Oktoberfest season. They're all starting to look for the next seasonal beer, and it's created a horrible creep. I have to admit, in that creep, the one brewery that I continue to admire for not being part of that is Anchor, with their Christmas beer. They will not release Anchor Christmas until the second week of November.
Nice.
They are steadfast, refuse to let that beer hit the streets until the second week of November.
Nice.
And when you think that it's a Christmas ale, you're right. You're on the front side of it. You're not a month and a half on the front side or 2 months on the front side that you see with some of these. But they are steadfast about their desire to not have Anchor Christmas hit the streets until that week right around Thanksgiving. But box season's the only season that doesn't seem to have creeped a whole lot. We get like Line and Kugel, like summer shandy in like the first week of March.
Mm-hmm.
Who's looking for a summer shandy the first week of March? You're still, how many weeks? You still have, how many more weeks of winter or freezes and stuff like that. But Bach usually doesn't come rolling in until generally pretty close to the box season. That's the one beer that, and I don't know. And if, Scott, you said you get the Jenny out there, the Jenny Bach. Do you see that really, really early, or do you not see that rolling in until early mid-March sort of thing?
We get the because we just had a homebrew club meeting before this all went down, where we did Bach, and that was probably February. So it comes out early. The spring Bach comes out, probably early February, mid-February.
Not horribly bad compared to some of them.
It's a good beer. The Genesee Spring Bach is very good.
So the time to buy a Imperial Autumn Stout, 4th of July?
Anymore. Honestly,
I get what you're saying entirely.
The past couple of years, I've seen it appear on the floor the first week of August.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the first week of August, are you really thinking about having your pumpkin beer or something like that?
I got to tell you, I am one of those people. I'm part of the problem. Because every year I look forward to Sam Adams Oktoberfest being released. And of course, I look forward to Warlock being released. Now, I haven't followed. I mean, Oktoberfest is a way easier beer to follow because the distribution is just so much wider for that beer. So it's easier to see just how early it comes out. But I guess the biggest part of it is because I'm an autumn beer guy and I love all things autumn. So that's what I kind of look forward to. But that leads me to kind of understand that appeal of, regardless of what season you're in, you're always looking forward.
Yeah.
So I guess that's that. So I mean, I'm the person that everybody hates, looking forward to the next season.
Do you know anything about Ellicottville Brewery?
No.
I've heard of them. That would be about the extent of probably my knowledge of them. I have heard of them.
Okay.
What state?
Oh, it's
New York.
Yeah, it's Western New York.
Oh, it's New York. Okay.
Yeah.
Because Ellicottville and Southern Tier are tied together by family. And I'm trying to remember or look up the connection. I think it is what I think it is Ellicottville is slightly older, and Finn DeMink is the owner of Southern Tier. His wife, I think, is the sister of Matt from Ellicottville. And they all started together. I got to make sure I get this right.
That's from what you're saying. I think I've heard that story before. It sounds vaguely familiar. I don't know if you have all the characters lined up right.
I'm pretty sure that's it. I'm pretty
But
sure that
I have heard. I do remember having heard that story before about the two of them being tied together, familia.
yeah. Finn DeMink is the owner of Southern Tier. That's for sure. And
his wife's
yeah,
sister. His wife's sister,
Oh, it could be his wife's sister. Maybe it's his wife's sister
who's over at Endicotville.
in Ellicottville. Yeah.
Yeah, Ellicottville. Yeah. Something a lot. Yeah, I do remember having heard that before.
Yep. I'm looking at it right here. Well, in Ellicottville, I met my business partner and wife. So yeah. So Matt Phineas's Finn DeMink, his first brewing job was at Ellicottville Brewing Company, and then well at Ellicottville, that's where he met his wife Sarah. And then they started Southern Tier together. It's fun. They're two of the biggest around here.
Mm-hmm.
Although Ellicottville is almost an afterthought right now with all the new breweries opening up in Buffalo.
Do they do a large distribution footprint, or are they?
I don't know. That's a super good question. We tend to talk to the small people, the smaller breweries, the craft breweries on our podcast. So we never actually talk to Southern Tier or Ellicottville unless we're doing something huge where I need to talk to their marketing team. Or
They're more mid-tier in a sense.
yeah. Let me take a look at their distribution, see if I can figure that out.
And I don't know why I've heard of them. I don't know if maybe at a festival someplace along the line I've tripped across their beers, or they just grabbed my attention because I read about them in a magazine. But I have heard of them, but I don't think I've ever had a beer from them that I can honestly say I remember. But like I said, if they were on the floor at the GABF, I probably had a beer because I spent one day there just exploring the entire New York, Vermont, Washington, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire area. I'm going to go drink all the beers over in that corner of the country because I never get them.
Yeah, and they're one of the major breweries in the area. I'll have to look it up. We'll come up with a Southern Tier episode and see if we can.
I'll watch for that.
All this
nice. That's awesome.
I'll watch for that.
The Buffalo Beer League will definitely want to be part of that. So we'll have a huge conglomeration of people.
I like it.
How many breweries are in the Buffalo area?
We're creeping up on 40.
Wow, okay.
Growing.
Currently open, we're at about 36.
All right.
You can find all the information at buffalobeerleague.com/breweries.
Okay.
There you go.
Is there a Facebook page for the Buffalo area breweries?
Kinda. Just before COVID, the organization, the Buffalo Niagara Brewers Association, voted to become a regional chapter of the New York State Brewers Association. So that's all in limbo right now.
Okay. All right.
Yep. But the Buffalo Beer League is it's the group where I do the podcast through, and they are super good about Buffalo beer news. So if you're looking for what's happening in Buffalo beer, you should go to buffalobeerleague.com.
All right, I will keep that in mind.
Like they are amazing at, and I don't know how he does it. If you're familiar with Hamilton, like I don't know how he writes as much as he does. Like how do you write like you're running out of time? And then I handle the graphic design and the podcast.
There you go. Perfect promotion right there. Well done, Scott.
I know, right?
Yeah.
slash breweries. We have a brewery takeout guide too.
Yes.
Every brewery in Buffalo that has takeout, we have listed how to get their takeout right now.
That's awesome. And Scott does a special songs and takeout night every Tuesday. You want to talk about that?
Sure. Tomorrow is country night. We are featuring one of our local cideries tomorrow. And I encourage people to order some takeout and order some local beer and listen to music. I don't ask for tips or anything like that. I do ask for requests and then I ignore them. I just ask that people support a local business on an off day, on a Tuesday.
Every day's an off day at this time.
Yeah, right.
Songs played by Scott. So if you want to participate, check out Scott's Facebook page and his page on WNY Brews. And so the Facebook page for the songs is Songs and Takeout. That's the title, correct?
That's correct.
Songs and Takeout.
34,
That's
35,
awesome.
36,
That's
37, 38, 39. We're at 39 breweries.
All right.
Then when you go to cideries and meaderies, we're at another 4. So that's 43. And then in planning breweries, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we've got another 6. So we'll be up to 49. That's crazy. We have way too many.
That's an interesting point.
People will come.
That's an interesting point, the saturation point. It comes up in a lot of discussions I have when I'm with brewers and industry people, the saturation issue. Historically, I will maintain we are nowhere near it.
I'm with you. I'm with you there. We can support all of these in Buffalo at the moment. I mean, COVID times are different, but
that same saturation topic has been around since 2015.
Yeah.
When there's questions about how much this craft beer thing was going to be sustained, I think the last 5 years have proven that there's enough demand and enough support throughout the communities that there's still room for growth. No doubt about it.
When I was saying there's too many, I meant there's too many to keep up with. Like with all the releases.
Go. Yeah.
Like it used to be, I feel like there was a point when I was drinking craft beer where I could keep up with almost the country. Right? Like, have you tried this one yet? Like, I've tried that one from that brewery out in Colorado. Have you tried this yet? Sure. And I can't even keep up in Buffalo anymore.
In your own area. There you go.
Yeah.
So the beer is come to you. Which from a consumer side is great. Well, because of all the variety that's available to you.
It is, but from a taproom standpoint, yes, but there's a lot of stagnation on the shelves that's occurring.
That's super true.
That is,
the number of SKUs. I mean, walk into Binny's, and I don't know what if you have a large chain out there, but you walk into Binny's and look at the number of SKUs. There's almost 2,000 SKUs of beer sitting there, and that's just a lot of SKUs, and it's that's becoming the problem. That's not the business model to go with anymore. The business model is just a brewery and tap room with where to go, and either you sell bottles that you bottle off yourself, or you sell cans that you do on a mobile canning, or the growler, the howler, or the growler situation. But to go into full-blown distribution is becoming a harder and harder.
Yeah, the distribution model is a whole different conversation, and that can be a show in itself. You're totally right that the shelf space and things like that that's become a whole different problem in itself for craft beer. So
it's an overload when you walk into some of those places.
Absolutely an overload. Yes, I agree with that. Yes, exactly.
Around here, if you're in the local supermarket, you're fine. But the beer stores are starting to back up. I mean, we'll make jokes all the time about, how old is that beer? Did you get it from the beer store? Yeah. Not the beer store in Canada, but I don't want to name names.
Well, the supermarkets are dominated by the big three and their little craft corners that they don't alert people to. I've watched at the Jewel. I've watched at the Jewel slowly shrink down. And granted, door number 3 has Goose Island and 10 Barrel, and well, guess what? Nobody realizes every one of them is owned by Anheuser-Busch. And that's what you're seeing. We all do, but that's what you're seeing in the supermarket is you're seeing less shelf space devoted to, say, in our case, Brickstone or Revolution.
Yeah.
And you're seeing more of that shelf space devoted to craft beer, but all those craft breweries, you get the Miller door. It's got Miller, it's got Blue Moon, it's got Coors, it's got Terrapin, and you're like, that's all one company.
Let me put a shout out to Wegmans, the major grocery company in our area. for having a killer beer selection. I went off on an 1.5-hour rant on one of the West New York Brewers episodes about why I don't buy Anheuser-Busch anymore, and that was exactly it. Is that people get this illusion of choice, and it's pushing people out. If I find out somebody sold to Anheuser-Busch in particular, it's never going to get my money again.
But they did. You have to admit they did a fantastic job of buying a brewery in every region of the country.
Yeah,
I mean, they literally did. I mean, their first purchase was Goose Island. There goes Chicago, and then we buy Timber, and then we buy Deschutes, and then we buy. And across the country, they've picked off a craft brewer that had a solid standing, a solid name, and a solid reputation, and threw it in, took it over as their own, and didn't put owned by Anheuser-Busch on anything, and it fooled the consumer. They were geniuses in that aspect of purchasing a craft brewer in every region of the country in order to be able to do that, because they were losing it. I mean, you went from a brewery that was making, Anheuser-Busch was making upwards of 60 million barrels a year at one point in time, and it was before all this started. They're someplace down in the 40-42 range.
Yeah.
If you just count the Anheuser, if you just count the Budweiser, the Bud Light, the Michelob, the Busch, and the rest of those, and you don't include their craft brands, they literally have lost probably 20 million barrels in production and sales in the past 15, 18 years. Their only growth was going to come from entering the craft market. And if you'd ever been down there, they have the small batch brewery that made some really, really good beers, but they didn't know how to upscale it in the Anheuser-Busch plant. They couldn't do it. It lost all the quality. It lost all the nuances when they would upscale it. So they eventually realized the only way we're going to stop this massive loss on our major brands is if we enter the craft market. And the easiest way for us to do it is to start buying these people one at a time, spread out across the country, and not let anybody know publicly. Anybody who's in the beer industry or follows the beer industry knows, but the general public does not know how many brands they actually control anymore.
Now, John, the history of Joliet Brewing and Chicago Brewing, it seemed like it was very closely mirrored to the Buffalo brewing scene pre-Prohibition. And what happened in Buffalo after Prohibition, I mean, obviously we lost breweries due to Prohibition, but then going up into the 70s when we lost our last brewery before this resurgence, it was all because of major companies coming in and buying out the breweries or flooding the market with just cheap beer. Simon Pure is one of the breweries that held on a little bit longer.
Yes, indeed. Yes, I'm familiar with Simon Pure.
Or Iroquois beer.
Yes. They were a large brewery with the Iroquois brand.
But how are they going to compete when Anheuser-Busch is throwing cheap beer into Buffalo?
In fact, right here are my Iroquois cans.
Oh, nice.
It's my little I don't have a lot because I collected cans. Yeah, right there's my Iroquois cans. No, it was also the issue of marketing. In Buffalo, who was buying all the TV spots on the TV shows? Iroquois couldn't afford that. Simon Pure couldn't afford that.
Right.
Anheuser-Busch, Pabst, Schlitz, Blatz were buying television commercials across the country, and then that's what did it was really. You start to see the downfall in the local brewers when television came. Radio was not so much. Pabst was the first brewery to advertise on radio, but radio was way cheaper. But when you had national, because a lot of radio stations were local, they weren't part of national groups. You know what I'm saying? Like NBC, ABC, CBS. Mm-hmm. There were still a lot of independent local radio stations. But when television came along and you had national broadcasting networks, you could buy radio ads from one end of the country to the other on television that you couldn't necessarily do on radio. And Anheuser-Busch, having been so well capitalized, was able to do that and then bought all that radio time. And the other problem was all those war people, all the World War II kids coming back, the beer that they were drinking overseas was Anheuser-Busch and Blatz and Pabst because those brewers were contracted by the federal government to supply the troops with beer. So then they would come back here having spent their entire time in World War II only drinking those beers And that was what they were then searching out because they had lost touch with their own hometown beer. Because this is what they had choices of when they were overseas in Germany and in most of Europe. You combine that with Anheuser-Busch's push on television and advertising, and it slowly started to squeeze out those small independent brewers who couldn't keep up, didn't have the money. You got to remember, Anheuser-Busch was a huge, huge capitalized company. I mean, Iroquois, one single plant that's got 100,000 barrel capacity maybe. And meanwhile, you got Anheuser-Busch now, and by 1950, that's got 4 plants in the country, each of which is producing 4 or 5 million barrels a year. You can't compete with that, not when they got that money to throw around. And it's for the suburbs around Chicago, you couldn't invade Chicago. You know what I'm saying? It was too big of a city. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Is Joliet Citizens or Aurora Brewing Company, they're not going to buy television advertising in Chicago. Yeah. The expense was ridiculous, and they couldn't supply the beer if it was called for because their plants only have 100,000 barrels. Anheuser-Busch and Pabst, meanwhile, are producing 5, 10, 15 million barrels a year, can clearly make more beer if they have to.
Yeah.
And Buffalo was one of those cities. Peoria was the same way. You start getting into those mid-tier markets. Once they owned the large cities, and they started attacking the mid-tier markets, which would be Buffalo, Rochester, Peoria, Grand Rapids, Madison, and it just slowly pushed everybody out.
Right. And that's why I don't buy Anheuser-Busch at all, ever. Except for the Natty Ice you guys made me buy tonight.
You're a team
oddly
player,
enough,
Scott.
am still a staunch. I oddly enough, Goose Island. I can't give up on my Goose Island. Honkers was the beer I came in on. I am friends with so many people there. I still think Bourbon County Stout's one of the best styles of bourbon beer in the nation. And they make a lot of specialty beers only available at the Fulton Street plant or only.
Yep.
That I will go down. This past week, Goose Island just released this last week an Old English ale aged in Old Foster barrels. Only available in 4-pack cans at the Fulton Street Brewery. Tough as it is, I'm like, you know what? An old style English ale aged in. Yeah, I want to try that. I want to try that because they still do make. Goose Island does make other small batch beers. Those 4-packs, I don't know how much they made, were sold out. Were sold out in 2 days out of the Fulton Street plant. You had to drive to Fulton. You had to pick it up. That was the only way you're going to get it. It was sold out in 2 days. So there wasn't a lot of it made, and I haven't tried it yet. But that is one of the things that I still will go and pick up some of that.
I haven't had a Bourbon County in years. We're Labatt country up here in Buffalo, and that's one of the beers that I what cut my teeth on. You know what I mean? Is you buy a 30-pack of Labatt as a college student. But
why didn't we go with Labatt Ice? Why didn't we go with Labatt Ice then?
Yeah, I'm sure they do. I haven't bought a Labatt in years either, and that's certainly ubiquitous. I'm pretty sure it's the top selling beer in Buffalo, probably for decades.
Really? Wow.
Is Labatt.
That makes sense.
We're basically
across the border.
We're basically southern Canada, and Buffalo is the
the capital of southern Canada.
The capital of southern Canada. We're a hockey town. We're very close to the border. I can get across the border in half an hour.
And you get 10,000 inches of snow a year.
We do. It snowed 2 weeks ago here.
Oh my God! Yeah, we always hear on the news about the Buffalo, the lake effect, lake effect snow in Buffalo. When they start talking about lake effect snow, they're like, lake effect snow is hitting Michigan and Buffalo.
Yep, we get a bunch of lake effect. What were we talking? Oh, Labatt.
Yeah,
we're the United States headquarters of Labatt's is in Buffalo. So we have a Labatt brew house in Buffalo with the brewery here with small batches and
that's cool. I did not know that.
That's what everyone says. Like you got to try the small batch stuff over there and support the local brewers over there. And I can't.
It's not really supporting. It's not really supporting a local brewer per se. But that I did not know that they had a brew house there. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's owned by the same people that own the Bills and the Sabres.
Oh wow! Now, I don't even know who owns the Bats now as a brewery anymore.
It's Anheuser-Busch.
Is that what is that? Is that
outside of the United States? It's owned by Anheuser-Busch.
Okay.
But there's it might be a monopoly law. I don't know why they are not allowed to be owned by Anheuser-Busch in the United States. So in the United States, they are owned by. I'm going to look it up.
Miller Coors.
Yeah, I've heard about this.
Well, Miller Coors is the same. Miller Coors is the same way. In the U.S., Miller Coors is a separate company, but in a lot of the other rest of the world, Miller Coors is under the parts of Miller and Coors are under control of Anheuser-Busch.
Okay.
And I think that falls with the monopoly laws that you were talking about.
Molson is with Coors, so it can't be. Is it maybe Constellation Brands?
It's Fifeco of Rochester, which also owns Genesee, by the way.
Tennessee.
Yep. Okay. In the United States, Labatt brand beers are sold under license by Labatt USA, which since 2009 has been fully independent of the Canadian firm and a subsidiary of the privately held Fifeco USA of Rochester, New York.
Okay.
But I still don't support them.
But Genesee, you will.
Genesee because of the cream ale. But this is the first cream ale that I have purchased in probably about 3 years.
See, one of these other two, this guy above me or the one who left should send you some Spotted Cow. Have you had Spotted Cow from Eclairs?
I have not.
I'll send you some Spotted Cow.
Yeah. Jason, you need. You should send him some Spotted Cow and let him and the rest of the guys over there do a Spotted Cow Genesee Cream Ale taste.
You know what, John? That's a great idea. We're doing it. That's it.
All right. I'll send you my favorite beer though. I'll send you the Oak Borderland.
Yes. And get some more free beer from your friend that you had to give up a bottle of that for hams. Seriously. He owes you big time.
He doesn't own the bottle shop anymore.
Oh.
I know.
All right, gentlemen, I got to round it up.
Too bad. We're still talking. I'm sorry.
I'll come back anytime you people will have me.
Seriously, John, thank you so much for joining us. I would greatly look forward to having you on again if you're up for it.
Right? I might call you for mine too, because I love talking history.
Yeah, no, John is a wealth of history, no doubt. And did we just lose him? Oh, man, I think I just said that right on time. Yeah, he is frozen. All right. Check out Scott at WNY Brews. Cheers. We have we do our webcast every Monday and Thursday, 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and we have our podcast every, or I shouldn't say any frequency, but we have a podcast that we do under the name A Nice Place to Brew, and it's available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcast from. Check us out there, and check out our YouTube channel for all of our past episodes. All right, thank you so much for tuning in. We end every show one way, and we raise a glass. John, this is where you raise a glass.
Wait, I gotta get a glass. I gotta get some beer into a glass. Okay, here we go.
Yes,
I do that every week. Every week I do that.
All right, and here's our send-off, gentlemen. It takes a lot of good beer to make great beer. Cheers.
Cheers.
Awesome.